If we are ever going to hear God's voice in the season of our lives, we have to learn how to quiet down the noise. We have to turn down the volume of all the chaos and distractions that would keep us from hearing what he is saying. The good news is when we discover how to tune out all the static, his voice becomes very clear. And right now, he's speaking to many of us through the concept of timing. And if we'll pay close attention to the kind of timing he's talking about, it will cause us to take some significant actions that will change everything. You see, there's a story in the Bible about a man by the name of Joseph. Joseph was sold into slavery by his own brothers, taken to Egypt, and falsely accused by his master's wife. He ended up in prison where he stayed for 2 whole years. But even though his life was filled with misery and heartache, Joseph never lost faith in God. He knew that one day he would come and rescue him, and 2 years later his dream came true. Pharaoh had a dream that troubled him, and since Joseph was known as a dreamer, Pharaoh summoned him to explain it. So Joseph interpreted Pharaoh's dream, giving him insight about an impending famine. And because of his explanation, Pharaoh appointed Joseph as the ruler over all of Egypt. Within just a few weeks, Joseph went from being a prisoner to being second in charge over the entire country. How did this happen? Well, it happened by simply waiting on the timing of God. You see, there are actually 2 types of timing mentioned in the Bible. There's Chronos time and there's Kairos time. Chronos time is simply the way we measure time on the calendar. It's the days, the weeks, the months, and the years. In other words, it's the tick-tock of the clock. On the other hand, Kairos time is best described as divine time. It has to do with seasons and opportunities. It refers to a moment in time when the doors of heaven are open and what we desire most is right within our grasp. It's like when a fisherman casts his line into the water and waits for a fish to bite. He knows that eventually the right fish will come along, and when it does, he will be ready to reel it in. Well, something similar happens when we wait on the timing of God. We know that one day he will lead us into our promised land. Now, it's important to understand that Kairos time doesn't always line up with Chronos time. In fact, sometimes we have to trust God's timing, even when it seems like things are not lining up. Take, for example, the nation of Israel. For 400 years, God told them to wait until the time was right for them to leave Egypt. They waited and waited, but the longer they waited, the more difficult their life became. Eventually, Pharaoh gave the order to kill every firstborn son in the land of Egypt. And as a result, every family was mourning the loss of their child. But for the family of Israel, they were spared because God had delivered them from death. That's because they trusted in the timing of God instead of the timing of man. Here's another example. When Jesus fed the 5,000, he didn't do it until he looked at the crowd and said, "They're hungry." In other words, he didn't feed the 5,000 until he knew it was the right time. Similarly, we must learn to feed the people that God brings our way. But in order to know when it's time, we have to develop our spiritual antenna so we can hear his voice. And once we tune into what he's saying, we need to be obedient and act immediately. For instance, when Moses was called to deliver Israel from slavery, he hesitated at first. But once he heard God say, "I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sorrows. Therefore come now, and I will send you to Pharaoh so that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt." In other words, once God told Moses the time was right, he followed through, and the rest is history. However, there are also times when we have to exercise patience and wait on the Lord to open the door. Take David, for example. David wanted to build a house for God, but he said, "I am not worthy of all these blessings that have come to me, that you have caused all this great wealth to come to me. Surely your riches and your honor are from the Lord God Most High, who has had my faithfulness before him, like your faithfulness is before him. Surely I will not offer burnt offerings to you, or pay my vows with sacrifices." Then Solomon said, "The Lord has spoken, saying, you have shown great zeal for building a house as a temple to my name. Because you have zeal for my name, I will do thus for you. I will give offspring after you, who will come from your own body, and establish your dynasty. Thus he shall build the house for me and plant the place I have chosen. And I will establish him as a king, and I will be a father to him, and he will be my son. I will not take my loving kindness away from day or night. I will not be partial, nor will I accept bribes, for I will judge among the offspring of men according to what they deserve. For it is my house, and I am God, and I have called this city by my name, and I will it to be a place for myself. Now, David waited a whole year before he began to build the temple. Why did he wait? Well, it's because he wanted to make sure the timing was perfect. He didn't want to rush it. Instead, he wanted to lay the foundation upon which the greatest church of all time would be built. And the same is true with us. Sometimes God calls us to lay the foundation of a new ministry or a new business. And in those cases, we should take our time and follow his blueprint. However, there are other times when God opens the door for us to step through and enter into what he has already prepared for us. For instance, when Joshua told the Israelites to march around Jericho for 7 days, they only had to take action on the 7th day. For 6 days, they marched around the city, but they didn't claim their promise until the 7th day. And that's because the 6th day represented preparation and the 7th day represented possession. In other words, the 7th day was the Kairos moment. It was the time to take possession of the promised land. So here's the challenge. Are you living by Chronos time or are you living by Kairos time? If you're living by Chronos time, that means you're living by the clock. You're looking at your age, the date on the calendar, or the amount of time that's left on the contract. But if you begin to live by Kairos time, it's like living in the eternal now. It's living by revelation and walking by faith. Look at it this way. Chronos time is like the container and Kairos time is like the content. Chronos provides the structure, the framework, and the boundaries, but Kairos adds the depth, the meaning, and the purpose. Chronos keeps us on track, but Kairos helps us move forward. So here's the bottom line. Let Chronos time be the container that holds your goals, your plans, and your dreams, but let Kairos time be the content that shapes your vision, your passion, and your purpose. In conclusion, let me remind you that it's God who ultimately determines the timing. Our job is to listen to his voice and obey his word. As we finish up this video, I want to encourage you to take some time to seek God for any areas where you might be waiting on his timing. It could be a situation in your marriage, your career, your finances, or maybe even your future spouse. Whatever it is, write it down in the comment section below. And then I want you to memorize this verse. I'll be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving let your requests be made known to God. Resisting the devil steadfastly. Submit yourselves therefore to God. Resist the devil and he will flee. Make no mistake, the enemy will try to distract you. He will try to deceive you and even discourage you, but don't give up. Keep praying, keep believing, and keep moving forward. Soon enough, God will open the right doors and set the right people in your path. Just remember to stay flexible, stay focused, and above all, stay faithful. Now, before you go, please take a moment to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on so you never miss a new video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.